Hi everyone, good morning, good afternoon. Very welcome to our webinar. My name is Paul Drano. I'm the head of professional services team at Keelvar. I'm thrilled to be the host, but I'll also be one of the speakers to today's webinar. I'm joined here by Thomas Lario. Hi Thomas, how are you?
Hi Paul.
Awesome. So Thomas is joining us from Upply, one of our partner. With whom we recently launched our integration, so live integration between Upply Market Intelligence and Keelvar, our tool. So what we've prepared for you today in the next kind of 30-40 minutes for this webinar, we'll give you a quick introduction to Keelvar and Upply if you don't know us already. Then we'll jump right into our topic. So what we prepared for you is to give you an overview of the tender season landscape, what it is going to look like, what are going to be the main driver that you should be watching out for. Thomas is going to give you an overview and outlook of the freight market, give us some good data to back up all the analysis and to set up your expectations of what will be coming up in the next couple of months. What we really want to try to do during this conversation in this webinar is to make sure you're fully equipped to approach this tender season. So we'll try to share with you kind of different sourcing approach that you can leverage in the next coming months to make the best out of the sourcing. So we'll go high level, go into the different go-to-market approach, but we'll also show you where you can inject market data intelligence at the different step of your sourcing process. Now we'll dedicate kind of a last 10 minutes to kind of a Q&A to get any other question you have. So yeah, just as kind of like a few housekeeping rules. So you have a chat, feel free to add your question there, and we're gonna take them on at the end of the webinar. All right, very good. So let me give you kind of a brief introduction of Keelvar if you don't know us already. So Keelvar is sourcing optimization and automation software. So what that means is that we're a tool where you can run RFI, RFPs, RFQs, auctions. We're category agnostic, so that means that you can run all sorts of tenders from constructions, from logistics, packaging, services, and from different size, right? It can be the very complex multi-round with thousands of items to very single items. And we rely on the sourcing optimization capabilities that we call scenarios that help us with kind of this optimization functionality. We also offer automation sourcing. So that's one of the products that allows you to automate part of your sourcing end to end. And we also have a rate manager where at the end of your sourcing, you can store all of your rates. So we'll touch on some of the features along the product during today's conversation. But yeah, just so you know, so we're based out of Ireland, founded in 2012, founded in a research lab by Alan Olin, our founder and current CEO. And today we have hundreds of customers within the 500 blue chips companies from all sorts of industry, manufacturing, food production, tech industry, etc. So that's about Keelvar. I'll let Mathieu tell us more about Upply.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. So Upply is a French-based company, but we're working with more than 500 enterprise clients right now all over the world. A majority of our market is clearly not France, let's say. We are a tech company working in tech and data, machine learning, but dedicated to supply chain and more specifically about freight. We offer a transport management platform with many kind of services. Here you see the majority of our services, where we offer a marketplace, a transport management place where you can directly, as a shipper, as someone who is need to have transportation solutions, you can meet directly and find freight forwarders, carriers. You can organize your transport management operations. And manage your operations. And this is the big part of what we do. And based on that, we have also a lot of different services. The Upply Green, where you can directly compute what are the CO2 emissions, but globally speaking, all the different emissions that you have. And the thing that we will look at more specifically today, and the partnership that we have with Keelvar on that, is really taking out value on data, on transport data, with our pricing and benchmarking solutions, where, and we'll see that just after on the methodology, we gather 100 billions of data, and we try to analyze what is happening on the market from a data point of view, and then with experts in ocean freight, road transportation, air freight, to understand exactly what happened in the past, what is happening right now, and try to forecast also and give scenarios of what is happening on the market. So this is exactly the topic today of this webinar, and this is really the tool, the benchmarking solutions that is connected today with Keelvar. And to a kind of introduction of what we will see just after, we can go on the next slide where we have the methodology. This part is quite important for us. We will not go into much details to try to keep high focus. But it's important when you are using data to have trust in this data, because you will base some decisions and quite key strategic decisions on this data. So what we do at Upply is first we collect what we call transaction invoices directly, meaning that for a specific transport from point A to point B that really happened, we receive all the documents, the transport documents, with the price and all the different surcharges. And this is what we take into account in our database. We don't take into account results of tenders, quotation, RFI. We want real transactions. We gather that from shippers, carriers, freight forwarders, also from our own transport management platform and marketplace. We have a global coverage for that, air freight, ocean freight, worldwide for sure. And then we are very strong in road transportation in Europe, more than 45 countries in Europe and North Africa. And in addition, we have North America with the US, Mexico, and Canada. Then this is about granularity. The more data we have, the higher we can go into detail. We are looking at FTL, LTL, meaning full truck transportation, less than trucks or partial transportation, a different type of containers, but I won't go into that much detail. What is very important for us is then to give a confidence index on the benchmark, on the estimations and the index that you will use. It's kind of a weather forecast in the sense that if you're asking for a specific origin destination, we will give the estimation that we have and the confidence that we have. And everything is, we try to be 100% transparent on that to build trust and to have also a scientific approach where we have a huge document that is explaining what are all the what algorithms are we using for that. And that's it for the introduction. We can go now deep into the analysis of the data and what is happening on the market.
Very good. Thanks so much. I think most of our audience today, is preparing for the tender season. They are coming from those space, the ground transportation space, ocean and air freight. They are kind of looking today, ways to do things and maybe change some of their process. So kind of our starting point, so we keep mentioning the tender season is happening, whether we like it or we hate it. But we'll try to make it a bit easier for you guys and maybe give you concrete solution on how to prepare for this. So what we wanted to start with is to kind of show kind of the key drivers that are going to be shaping your tenders in the next couple of months. The main thing that we've gathered them into was 4 groups: the volatility of the market, the geopolitical situation, the capacity, and the sustainability. So if we just look at the volatility of the market, right? One recommendation that I always give to my customers, to my users that are preparing the tender, is to build a tender that is gonna change over time, meaning that you don't want a tender that selects one price for all per lane. You want to break down the prices because there's a lot of factors into your cost model that needs to be taken into consideration, and that might change over time. So always make sure to break down your freight costs, your fuel costs, and other surcharges, and have a system in place that allows you to evolve as the tender goes. Most of the tenders that are being prepared now that will be launched in the coming weeks, I think we're looking at tenders to be launched mostly around October, carrying all the way until end of January and February. So that means in all these times, there's going to be a lot of things that change. The market might evolve. There might be some geopolitical changes. And so you have to be ready to react. So you have to put a system in place, a sourcing approach that is flexible enough to change based on those conditions, right? Always give the same simple example with the crisis that happened in the Suez Canal. We were all running sourcing events back 2023, 2024. When most people were about to war, they realized that with that crisis, all the condition was changed. So we had to collect surcharges related to this cost that come with the crisis, and we're not ready yet for the award. So be prepared for this kind of situation, because when that affects your annual tender, you have to be able to mitigate all the costs allocated with those changes. Okay, so those are different things to take into consideration, right? But it's not only cost related. Other things to look at is obviously the capacity, right? Capacity, especially when it comes to ground transportation, ocean transportation, might be limited based on the situation of the market. So you want to make sure that at the end of your tender, you have all the cards to make a realistic decisions on who is going to be your supplier. Yeah, so I was just touching on things to watch out for. So, the geopolitical situation is hard to predict, but you want to collect a lot of information early on in your tender to face any changes. So we're mentioning capacity, obviously having bed sheet prices that are broken down. And the last one I wanted to highlight is the sustainability, right? So, quite early on when you're about to prepare your tender, with a lot of ambition on what you want to cover, and that might get lost later on when things get busy, when you have to make decisions and you have to refresh your analysis. So the key part here is to align early on with your organization on what are those deliverables, and then collect them early on in an RFI or during the bidding in your bid sheet to make corporate decisions, because those are important factors. And the earlier you align with your organization, the better you'll be able to apply them in your decisions down the line. Okay, so maybe Thomas, I'll hand it over at this stage. So if you can tell us more, maybe kind of like the outlook of the market. Just looking at a slide you shared with us earlier. So if you can tell us more about that.
Yes, what we decided here on this webinar is to go in more detail on two modes of transportation that are road transportation, which you can see here dedicated on European road transportation. People who are used to go to Upply webinars are quite familiar with this kind of graph that we have on a quarterly basis. And then we will see just after the ocean freight market and try to talk about that also. I will keep very high level here. We have a full report that is dedicated on the topic that is available for free also. You will have a QR code at the end if you want to download it. But the main idea, and you were talking about it, Paul, is regarding really, we are in a market. Offer and demand are very important. We need to look at different factors. Capacity for road transportation is important. The available capacities. We are talking a lot about driver shortage, where we have a population of drivers that is getting older and older than the average population of Europe. So we can have a shortage that is predicted to happen in the following years, and that is already happened. But today, the reality is that even if we have a limited number of trucks available and capacity, the demand is weak. The demand is not here in Europe. If we are looking at the GDP, actual GDP of Europe, it's 0.9% in 2025, forecasted at the end of the year at 0.5, 1.1 for Europe at 2026. With certain countries like Spain that is working very well in the economy of Spain over the past 2 years, let's say, was very great, where Germany and France were not great. Let's say plus 2% for Spain, where we were at 0.6% for France and about the same for Germany, that are the biggest economy in Europe. So let's say that we have a weak demand. We have capacity that is a bit constrained, but for now it's not an issue because the demand is weak, and this is what we see here on this graph. after a big shock of demand just after the COVID crisis, where the rates clearly skyrocketed with the spot rates that increased very high, the contract rates that flowed. We are entering a phase where they are more stable, and we are still have some inflation. What we need to take into account when we are looking at the costs is rules that are in place, the ETS. We have additional costs also regarding I want to shift from a classic engine to HVO to electric trucks. All these parts we need to take that into account in the baseline, the structure of cost of road transportation. On the downward parts of the cost, we have the gas, the oil, where the price of diesel is decreasing or decreased over the past quarters, which is quite, when we're looking globally, this is why also the prices are quite stable. And that's the idea for road transportation. The main drivers are to say, okay, I need to know if the capacity is at the right level, what is the pressure of capacity, the pressure of demand, the behind cost or the structure of cost of a driver, a carrier, to understand exactly what is happening in the market. And then the best is to try to take the footprint of my company. Let's say that I have warehouses between Spain, Italy, and France. So I need to look at these specific corridors, because for sure the price of Spain, the price of a representative truck between Spain and France in Spain, the rivers, is not the same. You have different price structure. And this is where it's good to have a tool like Keelvar, a procurement tool, and to be connected with granular data where you can look directly at, from Barcelona to Paris, what is the current price of a FTL, a full truckload. So this is the view for Europe and for road transportation. And we can
Before we jump in, maybe one comment on my side. So we do mention the capacity, and what I see sometimes that the capacity is just as the suppliers, okay, maybe I'll have few trucks on that lane. Are you gonna have capacity? What I always recommend anyone's running a sourcing event is you look at your capacity at different level. You can look at the lane level, so from mentioned Barcelona to Paris, but also just at the company level. How much do you expect to have in total? And your suppliers will share capacity at the lane level, but also globally. Can also ask them to confirm their own they might have like different region and a specific capacity per region. You must be able to have a system that capture that information and then recommends you, because just going with the cheapest is not gonna help you there.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, what we see on the market from a shipper perspective is always the same, meaning that the best way is to look globally at all the costs that I have in road transportation, for instance, then to see if this cost is quite aligned with the market dynamics, and go into smaller details for a specific corridor, and then within the specific corridor go to a lane to lane, lane by lane, if I want to be very precise, and if I want to go and wonder just if I need to run a tender on all my lanes or only on a certain parts of certain corridors to try to benefit on the market or the market dynamics. And I will just take one question here that we have, because this is quite relevant for this graph, and I forgot to mention that this is what we call an index. So it's a 100-based index. As we are talking about prices within Europe, it doesn't mean that the price for a truck right now is at 135, for instance. It means that the price was harmonized at 100 in the Q1 2017, and it means that right now this is at about 132, meaning that it was plus 32% compared to the beginning of 2017. So this is how you need to read that. But for sure, with the granular data and the small data, you will have a specific cost, 1,200 euro, for instance, for a specific round trip or specific origin destination transportation.
And that's where here kind of a baseline is going to be important, because obviously the trends is up here. So if you look at kind of savings and you look at your own historical prices, it might not be relevant. But if you pull the data from Upply, can know what the market has to offer, and that's a better position. You know exactly how much you would technically we're talking about price avoidance, or we can call it savings, that's way more relevant than how, if you were just comparing to your historical prices. I just want to move you to the next slide that, in my opinion, looks a bit more positive.
It depends on which scenario. For the
Yeah.
forwarders, I can tell you that this is not very positive. But yeah, you're right. So this is the view on ocean freight here. On ocean freight, we are in a situation right now. So just to a small catch up, we have the COVID crisis. All the ocean trade lanes were frozen, especially in Asia. Then we have a big shock in demand just after the COVID crisis, where the rates went completely crazy. Went from I don't know 2,000 a container before the COVID to 15,000 for certain trade lanes. So very huge increase, where carriers and ocean companies won a lot of money, clearly, and this is public, and they invested also this money in buying new capacities, new ships. And this is one problem that we will have also, is that we are talking about capacity. And right now, we have a lot of capacities, and we are in a market where the supply overall is clearly exceeding the demand. So this is what we need to see. Why the supply? So the supply ships that are available. So what we see on the market is that we have seen that the Red Sea crisis, so the crisis with the Houthi that attacked some ships, and so the carriers company say, okay, we don't want to go any longer via the Red Sea, so we will go via the Good Hope. So we'll do all around Africa. This is about plus 10 days of route in addition, meaning that you will have some capacities that will be used or stuck on the ship directly, and that is quite balancing the other capacities. But even with that, even with the fact that right now the route is longer, that we have blank sailing also, meaning that we have some ships that are not leaving, or the companies that try to manage their rates, what we see is that they don't reach to keep a high level of rates, because mainly the demand is not here. The demand for containers, and this is linked with the first, we can have a look at the global GDP that is not good compared to the past years. China, the economy of China is not at the level of the past year neither. And then we had for sure the impact of the trade war, or the tariffs that are imposed by the Trump administration to almost all the world. If we look at there was a past study that we have done at Upply that looked at the impact of the tariffs of the Trump administration on Europe, and it was expected to have an impact of -5 to -7%, if I'm not mistaken, of goods of containers that were shipping from Europe to the US, so on the transatlantic route. So clearly we have a demand for containers that is quite weak and that is low, where we have huge supply, or we have a lot of big container ship and more that to come. Just a small figure, when you order a ship, is the shortest to have a ship ready and out of the dock is about 5 years, 5 to 6 years. So new ships will come in the following years. And we have MSC, for instance, that is about 20% today of the total capacity, that will still increase. And so that is, this is very interesting. And just a last comment on that also. Today we see carriers companies that have different strategy. We have an alliance of Hapag-Lloyd and Maersk that try to bet on the quality, to have regular lanes, and so they are betting on quality, while we have MSC, for instance, that is betting on a low price, low cost of transport of a container, to try to fill all these container ships. So this is what is happening right now. This trade lane here, we see it between Asia to Europe. Honestly, it's almost the same with different dynamics, but globally speaking, rates are decreasing. This is why also certain companies and shippers are running some tenders right now. They clearly they have seen that they run they have contracts, 1 year contract or 6 months contract that are at the level of, let's say, 2,000. But as the FAK, the spot prices decreases, some of them started even during the summer or before summer to run new tenders to try to find new prices and new allocations.
And I think that that's an important point here because that's a concrete application for buyers. If today I'm a category manager for Ocean, when looking at that, so a couple of takeaway I get. So A, I'm in a place where I'm able to challenge my suppliers, challenge my incumbents. I'm in a better space. And a good way to do that is really kind of to think about what is the best go-to-market strategy. We say we're still in the early stage of the tender season. So that's the stage where you can still define, okay, how are you going to conduct your annual tender in the next coming months? What's going to be the best approach? And as here, I wanted to share kind of some example that we see and what we think is the most effective based on the market situation. So if you can see here on the left, I share the full sourcing approach, which is a pretty standard approach. Which starts with an RFI where you would contact all your suppliers and maybe new suppliers. So it's a good opportunity to get new suppliers into the mix if the market allows it. And then in the second step, you would run the RFP where you would share the commercials, the list of lanes, of routes you need rates for, and run analysis. Now, if you're running out of time, it might be good to do both at the same time, the RFI and the RFP. Make sure you have a system that allows you to have the automation that once a supplier is matching your requirement, they're able to progress into the next step. But the main point I want to make here is that far too often I still see some companies that run a one-round tender. And that's not making the best of what the market has to offer. So what we recommend is to do at least 2 or 3 rounds of tendering across the next months. And a good technology to leverage at this stage is the feedback. So essentially, you want to be able to tell suppliers what's their positions as they are submitting offer. We're not speaking yet about an auction, but the last stage here, and I'm going to touch about it in a minute. But what you can do across this round is that at the end of each round, you can tell suppliers what's their positions. Ideally, you want to use what we call the traffic light system. So it's a system here where you can use the color coding, so generally green, amber, or red, that give the global position of the supplier on the lane. So here we're not being strict as we would do an auction saying you are winning, you're not winning, or you're 1, 2, 3. But we're giving them a global sentiment on how they're performing. And from the supplier perspective, it's easier, especially in a very large event, global ocean, ground transportation, where there are many lanes. They know where to focus. And it's important to have this variety of colors in the feedback, this different feedback based on their position. So they don't see, oh, I'm not doing good overall. It's more, where should I improve? Where am I doing good? And having this feedback turn out at the end of each round creates a momentum where they know that at the end of the round, they know their positions, and then when they progress to the next one, they'll improve their rates. Generally, we're seeing an improvement of 8 to 12% of price compression by using the feedback. Now, if you want to really make the best out of it and the best out of your sourcing process, just doing RFP runs might not yield all the results that you could get. So I would recommend to finalize your process with an auctions. I know auctions are very trendy. Many people are talking about it. And I think that's a good endpoint for any sourcing process. Now, there are a couple of things that you have to consider before going into the auction space. So when it comes to an auction, it's usually an exercise that's a lot of efforts for suppliers. They'll have to log in at a specific time, being logged in usually for an hour. Can be up to an hour, where they're in direct competition with other suppliers, and that takes a lot of efforts for them to prepare for this. but also the implication means that at the end of the auctions, they might or might not get business. So what you have to look into before launching that auction is to look into the spend. Are you making an auction that is interesting enough, that has a big spend in terms of volume, that will drive the engagement within the tender, but the shiftability. So those are the two factors to take into consideration, because if you invite suppliers to an auctions, unlike an RFP where you analyze the result and you make the decisions, in an auction, that's at the end of the auctions that the supplier is automatically selected. That's kind of how you make an auction that is credible, is that in advance you share what is the objective. I'm only looking at price, for example, then the supplier that has the best price will get that business. And by bringing that extra step of auction, you can yield up to extra 10% above the already savings that you got for the multi-round feedback. And whether or not to go to auctions is for you to decide. You have to take these factors into consideration. Maybe at the end of the multi-round feedback, you've already taken your suppliers where you wanted them to be. But what we see more than not is that the auction is considered at first, but then because some suppliers might be a bit reticent to do it, or you're scared about how it's going to be perceived, it's going to be abandoned as an idea, but we strongly recommend to keep considering those. Every time we've seen customers applying that auction strategy, they have great results. And here again, you're not auctioning the whole event, right? You can create bundle. If you have a lot of lanes, you can bring to auctions only strategic lanes. It doesn't have to be the whole business. But here, that's where I'd like to get a bit of a sense from Thomas, is that yes, the annual tender is not going away, right? It's the tender season, you're doing your large events, multi-steps, maybe in auctions, but that annual event is not 100% of your sourcing, right? And here you can see here on the picture I've shared to at the bottom, we still see a connection between market intelligence and spot event. So what you have to consider is that, is it the right time to go into market? Yes, the annual tender is probably still the best way to go in many situations. We see many customers that are running tenders now, but can you shift it maybe by a couple of months, or should you only keep certain lanes based on the situation of the market and bring to the spot by market other lanes? Thomas, would you like to add something to this?
Yeah, and I will add also that this is, Upply is by foundation a company that is quite neutral between shippers and carriers. And I wanted to say that because this is important also from my point of view, when you're a shipper, to know your market, and to, when you're running a tender and that you are putting some targets, to have credible targets and to be confident in the targets. And when you have a carrier, whatever he is, either freight forwarders in ocean freight, air freight, or road transportation, he will have arguments for sure because of this increase of price or that or that. This is important that on your side also you have either the counter arguments, or that you say, okay, I understand and you're right, and I have these statistics or this data that is backing your points. This is the first point that I wanted to say on that. And clearly it makes a tender go much quicker and be more efficient when you have this kind of intelligence with you. And one question that we receive usually, and this is regarding the which lane I'm selecting for the tender. There is also the question, do I go for 100% of contracts rates, or do I go on the spots? What is the good percentage between spot and contract? And here, honestly, I have the question almost every day. I don't have the perfect answer for that. Many companies are trying to keep with the 80% or 70% of contract. And for sure, you need contract, you need to secure capacity. And we have seen that with the post-COVID crisis, sometimes when you don't have a contract, you don't have a space on the ship. That's it. So it's important, and to have also this contractual relationship. But in certain case, and the market right now is oriented in this direction, having spots is a good way also to put to have a leverage regarding your discussions with the discussions that you have with carriers. And so it's important. And with the technology that we have today, globally speaking, it's much more easier also to go on the spot market, to understand what is how you can leverage the spot market.
And that's a good point when it comes to auction and target in general. What we see with our customers that are already using the Upply integration is that when preparing for this feedback, they would share feedback based on the target. So the traffic light system I mentioned, so they will automatically pull the data from Upply, then add it into their tender in Keelvar, and automatically show our feedback using the target. That is credible because when running a tender, it's not about squeezing suppliers or just being very aggressive. It has to be down the line, kind of like it's an engagement. So it has to be make the best and kind of a win-win solution in both situations. So very important to have target that is backed by data, and it's even more important if you're running an auctions. We're starting to see more and more Dutch auctions on the market, especially on our platform. And if you're not too familiar with the concept of Dutch auctions, you might have different name based on where you work, but essentially an auction mechanism where you have a starting price and automatically the price will increase up to the moment one of the suppliers say, well, I take that lane for that price. And then that lane is awarded to the first person that takes it, essentially. And having benchmark data from Upply can help you understand where the market can start, where it's a good starting point for your auctions, and then will help you to have just better engagement in this type of initiative. Okay. And another one I wanted to bring on, and I know we're kind of running a bit over the question. We might park a few more questions after that. But so where can we bring more Upply or market intelligence in the overall process? So we talked about the feedback, but obviously an important one is the baseline when you're running scenarios, right? As soon as you receive your offer, you can run scenarios in Keelvar that tell you how much you're gonna pay. Maybe if you keep the same supplier, if you switch suppliers, if you're okay to have one supplier per region, and the historical baseline is not going to be sufficient in that case in some market. So it's always good to have at least two baseline. You can see even three in some cases. You can have the budget baseline, the market baseline, and the historical baseline to really understand where you stand and what is the next step for your sourcing process. You know, do you feel that there is more room? So then that could be an occasion to go for an auction, or we're already close and we need to move on with our awarding. And one last thing I wanted to bring up here when it comes to kind of like the spot buy. So today our integration with Upply allows us to have rates that are directly pushed from Upply into Keelvar, right? You will need a Keelvar license and an Upply license, but the connector is for free and is off the shelf. So that means that if you're preparing your annual tender now, and you have an Upply and Keelvar license, you can pull data, so benchmark when it comes to rates, but also CO2 emission baseline, and use them for your scenario and your analysis. Now, where we want to take it one step further is that in the coming weeks, we're going to have another integration with our module, which is called the Rate Manager. And that's where here automatically you can have a go-to-market that is based on data from Upply. So you could say, well, those are all my rates. They're in my Rate Manager. That's the length of the contract. And if the rates are, let's say, 20%, then the baseline for that lane coming from Upply, then we automatically push it to our autonomous sourcing solution that will essentially create a spot buy request. And that's a great way to make the best out of the market based on concrete data coming from Upply. Okay. So I know we're just about time. Maybe just as we wrap up and moving to Q&A. So yeah, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, no, it's okay. I will just follow up on the Q&A. I've seen some questions already. Maybe I can jump on one question that I answer in the chat, but that might be interesting for everyone. The comment was regarding your Europe road transportation and regarding the freight, saying that this is unusual for spot prices to be lower than contract one. You're right, and what is important also to understand is this is a global view at the European level, which on certain corridors, you have spot rates that sometimes are lower than contracts. This is not the case everywhere. This is quite unusual. It was not the case over the past quarters and years, but this happened right now on certain corridor. What you're right, where clearly the demand is weak, and so people and carriers need to are okay to take a lower rates to avoid to have an empty return, for
Rely a bit on your help here, Thomas, to take on more question. I'm just facing a small technical issue. Consider questions if there's anything else.
Okay. Don't worry. I will take that. I have one. I will take the first one. That is, auction is very often bringing short-term savings. You're right. I won't read the rest of the question, but you're right, and I will try to comment on that. The auction part is is stressful, let's say, for carriers or freight forwarders. You're a part where you have a limited time of time. This is the best way to find the right rates. But we know also that this kind of auctions allows you to select some partners with whom you can then go on a longer term and to agree on a 1 year, 2 year, 3 years contract, sometime backed by an index. You can decide to go with a specific freight forwarder on certain corridors and say, okay, we signed for 2 years or 1 year or 2 years, and the index and the price will be indexed, put on an index to follow the volatility of what is happening on the markets, which is something quite interesting also. And another comment, I will go on, Paul, so cut me if you want.
Yeah, maybe just add my perspective on auction. I understand why for some freight forward or from suppliers, the auction exercise might be true. If you're an incumbent, that can be the case, right? But from a
Yeah.
buyer perspective, it's always a good opportunity to kind of diversify your pool of suppliers. And if you concretely give them, this is our objective, if we go for the cheapest supplier, you get the business, then it's kind of bringing like a fair approach to the auction. And I think that's really important that auction is credible and that, if you say those are your objective, and then that's so the suppliers can get market. That's a win approach.
Clearly the auction part is from an economical perspective, this is the best way to find the right price for both parties. Then I think you need to establish the relationship and etc. to have a long-term relationship. I completely agree with that. So what you say, do you have chemicals, road bulk transportation? Say yes, yes we do have hazardous goods. So I will just answer to that one quite quickly. So yes, we do. Do you collect real-time prices from all year? How difficult is that process? We do collect, so this is what I was saying at the beginning. This is very important for us. This is what we call transactional prices, invoices. This is the price from a real shipment. This is updated every day. Every day, it means that we receive the price of the shipment that happened yesterday or the day before, directly from either shippers or the haulier, the freight forwarders, and these are real prices. This is not quotation or result of quotations. Okay. How? Okay, I try to find. There is another one. So, would you say your solution is logistic centric? What does it offer? So I don't know if this question is for Keelvar from Upply. I will let you answer for Keelvar and I will answer for Upply. So the question is, would you say your solution is logistic centric?
Yeah, so not really. Well, actually, not quite because our sourcing solution is really tailored for all type of sourcing events, all type of category. We like to call it us ourselves category agnostic. So whether you want to do a sourcing event for raw material, construction, services, whether it's a complex event or a simple kind of tail end event, those are all the use cases that can be captured through the tool. And here again, it's really a full suite sourcing solutions. So that include RFI, RFP, RFQ, auctions, all type of auctions. And that could be a manual hands-on type of events where you build your events, you build the RFI manually, or you can automate it through the autonomous sourcing solutions. And we're also a rate manager. And for any other pieces, such as the market intelligence or the integration with other software, we have open API, so we can integrate for the solutions with the like of Upply. So no, it's not only logistics, but we do a lot of logistics and all type of logistics.
And the answer for Upply is yes, we are dedicated to logistics. How to face the challenge where the markets, freight owners and carriers are not prepared in tech to perform in tender. Let's say that question is how to face the challenge that the markets and the freight market is not ready for the tech revolution. I will answer this one from my point of view at Upply. The market or carriers and freight forwarders invests right now and have invested a lot in digital. I think your answer, so then you specify this is especially the case in Mexico. To be honest, I don't know exactly the market is Mexico. I can assure you that in Europe and globally speaking, since the COVID, carriers and freight forwarders have invested a lot in dynamic prices, in tools to answer automatically to some tenders. And I think this is still moving quite fast on this part.
Yeah, and I can add to my own kind of perspective and experience with carriers or even bidder in general. There are concerns when we're launching events and tool with some carriers. Obviously, when it's a larger carrier, especially ocean or air freight or medium-sized or large carriers, we're not really concerned with kind of technical skills of carriers. But I've seen in Keelvar events recently an event with 1,000 suppliers in Europe with all sizes. Some carriers were really interested into a small part of the market, so probably a carrier that just have a few trucks. But we haven't really seen a major difference in the engagement. At Keelvar, we really value the bidder perspective. We regularly conduct interviews with bidders of all sizes to make sure that on their end, what they see is they have a good experience, it's user friendly, and they can share all the information that they need to be competitive when they're placing a bids within Keelvar. What I would say is just bear in mind that when you're creating an event, you have carriers on the other side. So, if you were to create doing sourcing events for ocean freight and you have some carriers that are only interested into part of the market, well, even in Excel, most people would just send all the line items. Or I see some events where they would show them all the line items and they'd be like there to pick. What we recommend is to use functionality like visibility when you can only show the part of the market where the supplier can be interested in. That really make their life easier and help with the engagement, because otherwise they might feel a bit discouraged if they see all those lanes and be like, well, such a big tender, there's not a lot of chance for me to be selected. Whether if you only show them what they could be interested in, that really boosts their engagement throughout the tender.
Right, and we have a question that is a good follow-up with the next slides, where the question is, what does the market engagement process look like? And so I know that on the next slides we have some QR codes where you can find a demonstration of Keelvar and then some knowledge about Upply also. I don't know if you want to answer to this one, Paul.
Yeah, and I think we're kind of like over by 10 minutes already, so I think that could be kind of one of the closing notes. Maybe we're gonna hang out for a few more questions after that. But yeah, we included here QR code link if you're interested to see a demo of Keelvar and Upply together. I'll go back to these slides. Here's another slide for two of our events that will be in 2 weeks. So ProcureTex in London, which is our best of breed events, and Keelvar Connect, which is a Keelvar focused event the following day. And also I wanted to share kind of the content here. This is a direct link to a recent research from Upply.
Yeah, this is a kind of summary of all the statistics that I quote during the webinars and much more for sure, because this is about 30 to 40 pages of white papers that are available directly from Upply. And I'm looking back at the chat to see there are other questions. This one we have done it. Yes, there is maybe one that is interesting, because we were talking about that, Paul, yesterday regarding the CO2 benchmark emissions, how we can use that. This is something more and more used also regarding when you launch a tender to select a provider for sure on their quality, on their price, but also on the CO2 or CO2, let's say globally speaking, the emissions and the impact on the environment. And what we were talking about, Paul, yesterday, and correct me if or add content, feel free to add content, is that you can use Upply as a baseline. At Upply, we have a CO2 estimation calculator and with other emissions also that are estimated for an average truck, let's say. So you can, for a certain corridor, say from this point A to this point B, for a full truckload of 30 ton of merchandise, of 23 tons of merchandise, for instance, 33 pallets. I know that the average CO2 emissions right now is, I don't know, 3 tons of CO2. And I can then rank my providers depending on this threshold or these targets, let's say.
Yeah, 100%. So when it comes to CO2 emission, that's probably in the top 3 of the most important non-cost component when making a decision. Usually we find the capacity, then the lead time, quite important, especially in logistics, and then the CO2 emission. Where I see quite often the Upply data being used in scenarios is that they would use it as a baseline. Let's say they would collect the CO2 emission for each supplier, and then use the baseline from Upply at the lane level and say, okay, what if I just go with the cheapest supplier on that lane or for a group of lane? And what if I exclude any suppliers that, let's say, 20% higher than its baseline? So it's kind of to see what's the impact of this of focusing more on like greener supplier compared to the baseline. That's one approach. Or it can be simple, kind of like bonus malus system where you associate the cost of how far they are from the baseline that is provided by the market intelligence. And it's really a simple way, but a concrete way to have data such as CO2 emissions that you can process the scenarios and then you can make a decision on it. I was talking recently with a sustainability officer, which was really struggling to bring into the sourcing process quantitative data and to set up objectives. So usually as a first step is to early on in the tender, nothing stop you from getting the baseline on all of the lots, right? Without getting the bids, you can make one call from Keelvar into Upply, then get kind of like total baseline across the whole business on what's the kind of CO2 emissions, and set up an objective, And then throughout the tender, report on how far, based on your final award, you are from that objective, and then take it as a baseline for next year. And that's kind of a good starting point. I see most major companies are having that approach today, and you don't have to wait kind of the end of the tender to report on things like CO2 emission.
Okay, and I think that's it for the questions, and we are on time, or at least.
I think we're a bit,
done.
But here is one of the QR code that you can use. Look, was great conversation with you, Thomas. And I thank everyone for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.